Look at a portrait of Princess Diana beside one of King Henry VIII. Do you see a family resemblance? This video uncovers a hidden 500-year-old bloodline, revealing that the people's princess carried a secret Tudor ancestry within her. By the end, you will understand the dark historical echoes that may have shaped her iconic and tragic life. We will trace a direct genealogical path through scandal and execution, linking the glamour of the 20th century to the treacherous courts of the 16th. How much of our destiny is written in the blood of our ancestors? That portrait comparison is more than a curious coincidence. It is the visible echo of a bloodline meticulously recorded in history, yet hidden in plain sight for centuries. To understand the full weight of this connection, we must first trace the documented path that links a 20th century princess to a 16th century king. The story begins not with a grand royal name, but with the aristocratic Spencer family, whose roots run deep into England's past. Diana Frances Spencer was the daughter of an earl, born into a family whose power and prestige were centuries old. Their lineage is a tapestry of nobility, carefully woven through generations of strategic marriages and political alliances. If we follow the threads of this tapestry backward through the 17th, the 16th, and into the 15th centuries, we arrive at a pivotal junction. Here we meet a woman whose fate is forever shadowed by her more famous sister, Lady Margaret Boleyn. While her sister Anne would become the queen who changed England, Margaret lived a quieter, yet no less significant, life. She married a courtier and diplomat named Sir William Carey, a close friend of King Henry VIII himself. From this union, a line of descendants began, carrying the Boleyn blood forward through the generations. This family line, the Careys and their descendants, would eventually intertwine with another powerful dynasty, the Spencers. Through a series of marriages documented in peerage records and family archives, the Boleyn ancestry was quietly absorbed into the Spencer family tree. Imagine, if you will, a single unbroken chain of mothers and fathers, daughters and sons stretching across 500 years. One link in that chain is Margaret Boleyn. Many generations later, another link is Diana Spencer. This is not speculative genealogy or wishful thinking. It is a concrete historical fact verified by genealogists and historians. The paperwork exists, the parish records, the wills, the marriage certificates, they all tell the same story. Princess Diana was a direct descendant of the Boleyn family. And because Anne Boleyn was the mother of Queen Elizabeth I and the wife of Henry VIII, this makes Diana a direct descendant of the Tudor dynasty itself. So when you look at those portraits side by side, you are not just seeing a trick of the light or a vague similarity. You are witnessing a genetic inheritance, a literal piece of history passed down through countless generations. The Tudor blood, with all its passion, its charisma, and its profound capacity for both love and tragedy, flowed in her veins. This established connection forms the undeniable bedrock of our mystery. But bloodlines carry more than just physical traits. They can carry patterns, echoes of destiny that seem to replay across the centuries. What if the tragedies that befell the Tudors were not just historical events, but a kind of familial shadow? This Tudor bloodline, so rich in history, carries a profoundly dark legacy. To understand what Diana may have inherited beyond a famous name, we must step into the shadow of the Tudor court. Anne Boleyn's story is not just one of romance and ambition, it is a masterclass in political destruction. After failing to produce a male heir, she found herself ensnared in a conspiracy orchestrated by her enemies and her own husband, King Henry VIII. The charges against her were grotesque and shocking: treason, adultery with multiple courtiers, and even incest with her own brother, George. Both were convicted in a show trial and beheaded by sword in the Tower of London. Anne's execution was not an isolated event. It was emblematic of Henry VIII's reign, a period where the royal court became a killing field. Nobles, friends, and even ministers who fell from favor faced the block. This was a system that consumed people, a monstrous machine of state power that demanded absolute loyalty and crushed those who challenged it, or simply ceased to be useful. The parallels to Diana's experience within the monarchy are difficult to ignore. She too entered a powerful, ancient institution as a vibrant outsider. She too challenged its rigid protocols with her warmth and modernity, earning both public adoration and private hostility from within the system. She often spoke of feeling isolated, trapped and persecuted by unseen forces, describing her life as a kind of imprisonment. Her tragic, untimely death in a Paris tunnel, pursued by cameras, feels like a modern echo of that old Tudor pattern, a luminous life extinguished by the relentless pressures of a fame and scrutiny she could not escape. Some historians and enthusiasts even speak of a Boleyn curse, a notion that the family line was doomed to tragedy. While we might dismiss a literal curse, the psychological weight of such a heritage is real. Growing up, Diana would have known these stories. She was a student of history and of her own family tree. To know your ancestor was a queen executed by her king. To know your bloodline emerged from such betrayal and violence, that knowledge seeps into the soul. It can foster a deep-seated sense of being an outsider, a belief that institutions cannot be trusted, and a foreboding that happiness is fragile. When she stood alone at the Taj Mahal, the monument to a great lost love, or when she gave that startlingly candid interview about her struggles, we were seeing not just a modern woman in crisis, but perhaps the latest act in a very old family drama. The system that destroyed Anne Boleyn was one of absolute monarchy. The system that hounded Diana was one of relentless media and royal tradition. Both systems were powerful, unyielding, and capable of devastating consequences for those who lived within their glare. This is the dark heart of the ancestry, not a supernatural curse, but a recurring pattern of collision between extraordinary individuals and the immovable institutions they represent. A lineage this significant does not simply vanish by accident. Its obscurity was a deliberate act shaped by centuries of social shame and strategic silence. After Anne Boleyn's execution, the Boleyn name itself became toxic. To be associated with a traitor and an alleged adulteress was a social and political death sentence in Tudor England. Families connected to her, especially through her less famous sister Margaret, had a powerful incentive to quietly emphasize other, more respectable branches of their ancestry. The Boleyn connection was not erased from the records, but it was certainly not framed in the family parlor. Think of it as a family secret everyone knows but no one discusses, a scandalous ancestor mentioned only in hushed tones within the library. This was compounded by the aristocratic system itself. Descent from a queen's sister like Margaret Boleyn was considered a morganatic or lesser line. It carried noble blood, but without the sovereign glory of descent from the monarch directly. For aristocratic families obsessed with rank and prestige, highlighting a link to a disgraced queen's sister was far less valuable than trumpeting a connection to a legitimate king or a victorious war hero. So this Tudor thread, while meticulously recorded in dusty genealogical tomes, was allowed to fade into the background of the Spencer family tapestry. It became a footnote for historians, not a headline for the public. This leads to a fascinating and more modern question. Did the Spencer family, and indeed the British royal family, know about this connection during Diana's courtship with Prince Charles? The evidence suggests they almost certainly did. The British aristocracy are perhaps the world's most meticulous record keepers. Their lineage is their identity, documented in peerage books like Burke's and Debrett's, which have listed the ancestry of noble families for hundreds of years. Diana's father, the 8th Earl Spencer, was a noted historian with a deep knowledge of his family's past. It is inconceivable that he was unaware of a direct link to the Tudors. Yet this fact was never publicly promoted. Why, in the context of the early 1980s, presenting Lady Diana Spencer as a descendant of the executed Anne Boleyn might have been seen as inconvenient or even sensational. The monarchy preferred a narrative of purity and fresh-faced innocence for the future queen. A bloodline steeped in betrayal, adultery, and beheading did not exactly fit the fairy tale image they wished to project. It was a historical truth best left in the archives, a quiet piece of knowledge within the upper echelons of society, but not a story for the front pages. So the secret was kept, not by conspiracy, but by a centuries-old tradition of discretion and a deliberate choice to avoid awakening the darker echoes of history. The lineage was always there, waiting in the faded ink of parish registers and heraldic shields for anyone who knew how to look. The parallels between Diana and her Tudor ancestors are not just vague similarities, they are specific, haunting echoes. Both women captured the public imagination in ways that threatened the established order. Anne Boleyn, in her time, was a sensation. She was not a demure foreign princess, but a witty, stylish Englishwoman who spoke her mind. The common people were initially fascinated by her, seeing in her a break from tradition, much like the public would see in Diana centuries later. They were both stars in their own right, generating a popularity that sometimes outshone the institution they married into. This public adoration, however, came with a relentless spotlight. For Anne, the danger was the gossip of the royal court, whispers that could be weaponized into charges of treason. For Diana, it was the flash of the paparazzi camera, a modern-day court of public opinion that could build her up just as quickly as it could tear her down. The mechanism was different, but the effect was the same, a life lived under constant, crushing scrutiny. They were also reformers, each challenging the rigid structures they found themselves in. Anne Boleyn's influence helped push England toward the Protestant Reformation, placing English Bibles in churches and challenging the power of the Pope. Diana, in her own way, staged a humanitarian reformation. She shattered the royal protocol of distance by touching AIDS patients without gloves, walking through active minefields, and speaking openly about her struggles with bulimia and depression. She used her position not to uphold tradition, but to humanize it, forcing a centuries-old institution to confront the modern world. Their marriages form another stark parallel. Both unions began with immense public celebration and pressure to produce a male heir. Anne's failure to bear a son was the beginning of her end. Diana, though she produced 2 sons, found her marriage crumbling under the weight of expectation, infidelity, and a profound emotional disconnect. The fairy tale disintegrated into very public, very painful acrimony. Even their roles as mothers resonate. Anne fought fiercely for the rights of her daughter, the future Elizabeth I, just as Diana was determined to raise William and Harry with a sense of normalcy and empathy, shielding them from the coldness she felt within palace walls. When we place their images side by side, the split screen of history, the pattern becomes almost overwhelming. A vibrant young woman enters the heart of power. She charms the public and disrupts the status quo. She becomes a target. Her marriage collapses. She is isolated. The question is no longer if there are parallels, but why they are so precise. Are we seeing the random recurrence of similar personalities in similar circumstances, or is there something more profound at work, a tragic cycle written into the very DNA of this lineage? To answer that, we must look beyond the individuals and examine the nature of the power they confronted. The evidence before us forms a powerful, threefold case. First, the genealogical link is irrefutable. Through the Spencer line and back through Margaret Boleyn, Princess Diana carried the literal blood of the Tudors, a fact documented in the annals of British peerage. Second, the thematic parallels between her life and Anne Boleyn's are too specific and numerous to dismiss as mere chance. Both were charismatic outsiders who challenged a rigid institution, captivated the public, endured fractured marriages under immense pressure for an heir, and ultimately met tragic, untimely ends under the glare of their respective eras' relentless scrutiny. Third, the historical context explains why this connection remained in the shadows, suppressed first by the shame of a traitor's name, and later by the preference for a simpler royal narrative. So we are left with that haunting, final question. Was Princess Diana's life, her choices, and even her tragedies subconsciously shaped by a 500-year-old familial legacy, or are these simply poignant historical coincidences, stories that resonate because human nature and power dynamics repeat themselves across the centuries? There is no definitive scientific answer, only a profound and compelling pattern. History may not repeat, but as the saying goes, it often rhymes. We want to hear what you think. In the comments below, tell us which parallel you find most striking. Do you believe in the weight of historical fate, or do you see Diana's story as entirely her own? For more journeys into the hidden corridors of the past, be sure to subscribe and explore our playlist on unsolved royal secrets. The past is never truly gone.